When it comes to Sega and bad business decisions, that's a unbeatable combo like peanut butter and jelly or bread and butter. And once again, we're talking about a silly business decision from Sega or somebody that's a part of Sega when it comes to their catalog of games and what they say, why and where and how things happen. Sega has a dedicated history of this, dating back decades of making terrible business decisions, whether it's software or it's hardware or it's the US branch fighting against the Japanese branch or just a whole litany of things. And we're going to talk about some of that here in addition to their latest egregious thing that they've said when it comes to the Nintendo Switch. Plus, we've got other things to talk about. But before we get into that, what's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos first. Now let's go ahead and first start off with what the Mr. Yokoyama from the RGG studio, Sega, Yakuza, he's the lead man there, and why they aren't bringing the Yakuza franchise to the Nintendo Switch despite the stunning popularity and sales of the system. So here was the tweet from Nebellion on Twitter about what he had to say. RGG studio head Yokoyama hesitates to bring Yakuza to Switch due to its family-friendly image in Japan. Quote, "Do we want to put a title like this where we're going around and picking a fight with the world and doing all this Yakuza stuff on a Switch?" Not on Switch, but on a Switch. I don't put Yakuza physically on a Switch, but no, I knew what he meant. I'm just joking around a little bit there. Then he goes on to say something about this is a really underground type of game, attitude, something like that. I'll have a link for you guys. You guys can check out the full thing when it comes to what Nebellion had to say here, but I want to talk about this because Sega, once again, a company who has a decades-long history of making bad business decisions, not decisions that I don't like, yet still result in great business, like let's say microtransactions from EA and Ultimate Team, but actual bad business decisions that affect their overall business, that tank their product and their stock, where Sega themselves have even admitted they have to change to their own investors because of rapidly declining profits. Now, we know that the Nintendo Switch, when it comes to Japan, is dominating the scene. We're going to talk about the Famitsu numbers and what the Nintendo Switch sold with Splatoon 3 in just a bit, but this is what I'm talking about when it comes to Sega and bad business decisions. They don't know how to read the room. They don't understand how to read the room. If you look at the Nintendo Switch, there are a number of mature rated or violent type of games on the platform. GTA is on the platform. Shin Megami Tensei is on the platform. Bayonetta is on the platform. Doom is on the platform. Mortal Kombat is on the platform. Saints Row is on the platform. There are a host of mature rated games on the platform and games that also do well. There's open world mature rated or open world violent games on the platform, like The Witcher 3, for example, or The Outer Worlds, for example, or Skyrim, for example. So there are a ton of games, and those games have relatively sold very well on the Nintendo Switch. So it's not like it's a money sink or it's a trap or a problem or you're not going to make anything. So for them, or for like him, to sit there and say, oh, well, we don't want to put it because the family-friendly image, when there's a bunch of other games that are making money and have no problem putting it on the system. And we know based on Nintendo stats, there are a large number of adults who play the Nintendo Switch in Japan and around the world. This excuse or this explanation is bad. It's just not good. I mean, it's the same studio, or more like the same publisher, Sega, who does Shin Megami Tensei, which is very violent and has religious themes and has all sorts of other stuff, okay? Has all sorts of stuff on there on the Nintendo Switch and has had success with over 1 million copies sold of a more niche end JRPG on the platform, the Nintendo Switch. So what is this guy talking about? Sega, once again, has a history of bad business decisions. Let's talk about Soul Hackers 2. After how many decades of being gone, after how many years there was a 3DS port of the original Sega Saturn game, after how many years they decide to bring it back and they skip the Nintendo Switch. The Switch isn't part of that for a traditional Japanese RPG. And if you look at the sales in Japan, the Nintendo Switch literally owns 90+% of the market every single week with the sales and the software sales and everything. It's 90+% of the market. And Sega, unfortunately, even with a AA RPG that has nothing to do with violence, with the real world and stuff like that, they still can't read the room and understand what to do. This is a silly statement. Based off of all the stuff that I just said right now with the facts, evidence, proof of actual games. Now, there are some people that would say, oh, well, it can't run on the Nintendo Switch. And I'd say to those people, well, you've never developed a game on the Nintendo Switch. You don't know what can and can't run. Plus, I've mentioned a bunch of games that are open world RPGs that are on the Nintendo Switch, like The Witcher 3, like Skyrim, like The Outer Worlds. There's tons of games on there. So to me, it doesn't make sense to say, oh, well, it can't run when you don't actually develop on the platform, and there's games that are on the platform that are open world big end RPGs that are on the Nintendo Switch. Yes, they're not as good as the Xbox and PlayStation version, but don't tell me it can't when you don't actually develop, you don't have that tech experience, and we see games that are similar on the platform as well. Because these Yakuza games are coming to base PlayStation 4 and base Xbox One. So I don't want to hear that. It's not like it's PS5 and Xbox Series only when it comes down to it. And he didn't give that excuse. He didn't say because it was power or because it was this or that. He gave that lame excuse there. I mean, look at Sega, guys. I mean, look at the Nomad. Look at the Sega CD, the Sega 32X, the Sega Saturn. They constantly make bad business decisions. It's like in their DNA. From Soul Hackers to how they handled Persona 5 and the release of that, to how they're handling this with Yakuza, to how they handle Sakura Wars, to how they handle a lot of games. This is just Sega. This is what Sega does. So I think that this is just something that I'm used to with Sega, and it feels it's just something that Sega's just going to continue to do because they can't help themselves. But it is what it is. What do you guys think about this? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, now moving on to the next topic here. Square Enix has discussed more about their business strategy and plans going forward, and I have to be 100% honest here, guys. As a big Square Enix fan, I think that this is the right way to go. Now, recently, when it comes to a Q&A with investors, here is what Square Enix had to say. Question: what is your rationale for focusing on the diversification of your investment strategy for studios? And here's what Square Enix said. The cost of developing a single title is on the rise. As such, owning studios outright means that while you can expect major returns, your downside risk is also substantial. The result of this is greater than expected earnings volatility. Therefore, rather than insisting on full ownership, we want to additionally adopt other approaches, such as forming joint ventures and taking minority stakes so that we will be able to hedge our investment risk, thereby controlling our volatility and achieving both growth and the optimal balance. Square Enix lost an estimated $200 million on the Avengers. They understand that the AAA market is very volatile. One second you can have people excited, the next second your game tanks and nobody wants to buy it, and you're scrambling for Game Pass deals, right? The Avengers and stuff like that. So I understand completely with that. But this is the right call for them. You're going to see more stuff where they partner with Sony, for example, and mitigate the risk of Final Fantasy 16 by taking boatloads of cash from Sony for it to be exclusive on the PlayStation platform or PlayStation 5, and it's also on PC. But when it comes to consoles exclusivity, they are going to do stuff like that. They are going to go into the games with partners, with having people invest, and it can kind of steer the direction of platforms or what they want to do with the game. They're still going to have their game. They're still going to own the IP for the most part, but they're going to be doing joint ventures with these companies in order to keep the quality up and not take the volatility and the risk that's associated with developing games on newer gen systems. It's just tough. It's not easy to do. And I also think what they're going to do is invest more in the AA market. They've been doing a great job, especially this year, releasing AA style of games like Valkyrie Elysium, the DioField game. Stuff like that is fantastic for the AA type of profile, and I think will help Square Enix kind of balance out that sheet, and balance out things to where they're not risking so much with AAA development and the big Western blockbusters like Tomb Raider and Deus Ex. They really have nothing to show outside of some great games. They have nothing to show when it comes to a long-term investment with these franchises. So I completely understand. They've got Dragon Quest, they've got Final Fantasy, they've got Kingdom Hearts. They don't outright own when it comes to Dragon Quest and Kingdom Hearts, but they've got these big games where they can make a lot of money on and mitigate the risk. They've got AA franchises that they can invest in. I think games like Octopath Traveler, for example. Octopath Traveler 2 is coming out. That's going to be a great game that's going to sell really good. It's on PS4, PS5, PC, and the Nintendo Switch next year, so that's definitely a good thing. And I think that they're also going to bring in more of those AA style of games. They got a Dragon Quest action RPG spinoff that's coming too, so I think that it's important that Square Enix kind of goes this new route and has conviction in it so they can kind of get back to where they were. Because I think that they kind of lost themselves a little bit in between all of the, Western type of stuff. But I feel that they're on their way back to being what they need to do. Heck, Babylon's Fall, that game is going to be shut down. That's another thing, trying to tap into the service market when you could have taken that money and made a bunch of cool other smaller type of games that people like Live Alive or like Octopath or things like that. So what do you guys think when it comes to what Square Enix is doing here? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, and moving on to the next topic here, guys. We've got a dominating performance from the Nintendo Switch here in the latest sales charts out of Japan. So the Famitsu has published its estimated physical game software and hardware sales data for Japan for the week of September 5th, 2022 to September 11th, 2022. Now, Splatoon 3 for the Nintendo Switch was the highest selling new game, opening up at 1,934,680 retail copies sold. And on the hardware side, the Nintendo Switch family of systems sold 182,876 units, while the PlayStation 5 family of systems sold 2,864 units, and the Xbox Series family sold 459 units, while the PlayStation 4 family sold around 11 units. Now, let's talk about this because I find it very interesting with the sales numbers. What we do know, based off of this, it looks like Nintendo sold well more than 1 million units in Japan only digitally for Splatoon 3, because after the weekend, Nintendo did say that Splatoon 3 sales hit 3.45 million. The Famitsu only tracks the retail sales. The Nintendo Switch obviously has a high digital ratio, or rising digital ratio, I should say. Nintendo has stated that it's around 50%. Now, with these sales here, we're clearly seeing that there was a large uptake of Splatoon 3 digitally on the Nintendo Switch in that opening Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So really cool there. But I do want to talk about some of these software sales as well. The Nintendo Switch has once again kind of taken over the charts. Out of the top 10 so far, it was 9 Nintendo Switch games, 1 PlayStation 4 game with Earth Defense Force. Shout outs to Earth Defense Force. A lot of Japanese gamers really like that franchise. But the Nintendo Switch hardware sales is kind of where everyone is looking at with the big thing here, 182,000 units plus with the Nintendo Switch system. The Nintendo Switch OLED, because we can actually break it down by model, the Switch OLED sold 148,377 units, while the regular Nintendo Switch, which I'm guessing is the V2 Switch, sold 27,859 units, while the Switch Lite sold 6,640 units. And I think that with this whole breakdown, you can clearly see what the market is gravitating towards and what Nintendo is putting out more. And on top of that, you even see with like the Pokemon Special Edition that usually with the Pokemon games, they get Nintendo Switch Lites. I think Nintendo has given up on the Switch Lite when it comes to pushing it in a new forms and new ways, and just said, hey, let's just go all in on the OLED in this last half or this last quarter, or however long the Nintendo Switch has on the market as the main supported system for Nintendo. So I think that Nintendo's really trying to push that OLED model quite hard here. But yeah, it's awesome to see. I think that Splatoon 3 is obviously dominating. We knew that it was going to be very well, but I think that it did even better than what people thought it was going to do, and I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon. The Splatoon 3 hype is just getting going. They just announced a brand new Splatfest as well in the recent Nintendo Direct, so I see this game selling very well throughout the rest of the year and pretty much for the rest of the Nintendo Switch's duration, and probably into the next Nintendo Switch until Splatoon 4 comes out. So what do you guys think about Splatoon 3 and its sales and the Nintendo Switch, its sales in Japan for the past week? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, and moving on to the final topic here, guys, we do got some extra information, some new information and gameplay footage for Fire Emblem Engage, a game that I'm extremely excited to get into. So let's talk about some other details when it comes to the Japanese footage and what you can expect in Fire Emblem Engage. So the recent Nintendo Direct kicked off with the reveal of Fire Emblem Engage, a brand new installment in the Fire Emblem franchise. This title launches on January 20th, 2022, and it's fronted by Alear, the main character that you saw in the trailer. As usual, you'll be able to pick from a male or female version, but both will be rocking the two-toned hair. Now, following the game's reveal yesterday, some fresh details have come in concerning Alear. You can see the breakdown of the protagonist, which I'll go over, along with some new footage showing them waking up from their 1,000-year slumber. Now, in Alear, the male version, who's voiced by Hiro Shimono, the female version is voiced by Aya Endao. Alear is a divine dragon, no surprise there. 1,000 years ago, after the Fell Dragon was sealed, Alear went to sleep. Alear slept in the sacred land of Lithos. One day, they suddenly wake up and find themselves unable to remember who they are. Vander, a dragon guardian, one of the individuals who has protected the divine dragon's slumber, and you kind of go from there. And I talked about this in my video yesterday. If you haven't seen my Fire Emblem Engage video that I did talk about how it could already be better than Fire Emblem Three Houses, please make sure you check that out. But this game seems to go back to the Awakening roots. The art style, the vibrancy, the color, I love what they're doing with this game. I actually like the heroes aspect or the Fire Emblem Awakening aspect, because this style where you can summon heroes to fight on your team has been done before. We've seen this in Awakening. There's been like extra stuff that you can get to play as Marth and other things, but how they're doing it now is completely different, and I really like the fact that they're almost like personas that you can use, and you can fuse with them and turn into like a god type of mode and just do crazy types of damage and everything. I think that it's going to be really fun to get a variety of different characters and be able to use different emblem rings and fuse them and see what happens. And I think we all want to know, is there going to be Roy? Is there going to be Ike? I think that's going to be lit to be able to bring back some of the best heroes from past Fire Emblem games, because it almost kind of feels like if Fire Emblem Heroes wasn't a gacha game and they wanted to make a real Nintendo Switch game, this is what it would be like. So I like that without all the gacha and the microtransactions and all that. So I'm excited for Fire Emblem Engage. I think that this is going to be great. This feels to me like it's a rebirth of the Awakening style, and Fire Emblem Awakening is where I really got into Fire Emblem. I had played the previous ones, but Fire Emblem Awakening was that game for me. Heck, helped save my life when it comes down to it, which is a story for another day. But what do you guys think about Fire Emblem Engage so far? This new footage and some of this information about Alear, the main protagonist in the game. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and we will see you for the next video. Peace.